What does spiritual narcissist mean to you? In this video, I'm going to provide 3 insights on spiritual narcissist so you can avoid having your spiritual awakening weaponized against you. And so you can continue your transformation and growth without the potential of emotional abuse. After this video, you'll be aware of the signs indicating an ego-driven spiritual narcissist. My name is Rhonda and I despise emotional abuse. Thank you for joining me as I go over 3 ways to spot a spiritual narcissist, because a narcissist is a narcissist, regardless of them being involved with any spiritual practice. The first one is a lack of empathy that's disguised as detachment. And this is demonstrated by a spiritual narcissist by responding to someone's suffering and blaming them for their own suffering because it's a result of their own karma or their own bad energy. And remember, people with a true spiritual destination will bring you up instead of putting you down. Part of the steps for spiritual enlightenment have to do with creating awareness, self-awareness, and also experiencing detachment. And spiritual narcissists will twist that and use that fake detachment as a way for them to get away with not showing any empathy. When I think of a narcissist, spirituality really didn't even come into the picture in the past. And as I started researching and becoming more involved with the people who are interested in an awakening and transforming their lives and finding their purpose, I realized that not everyone had, my best intentions in mind. There was a man at a seminar that I went to that was definitely like that. He thought that he was better. He walked around. He was fairly aloof. And don't get me wrong, I didn't pass any judgment. These were just things that I noticed on how he behaved. And one of the things that really tipped me off is when he wanted to do an experiment with everyone and go around, and we were to, put our palms together, and he was supposedly reading our energy and doing these things that he said would be beneficial to us. But when he got to me and I put my hands up there, I immediately pulled back because I've had experiences with narcissists before, and I recognized that he wasn't giving anything to me. He wasn't trying to do anything like that. What was happening with me is he was drawing on my energy, pulling it away from me. And when I asked him about it, he said, "Oh, I wasn't aware that I was doing that." And I really didn't know anything about spiritual narcissism at that time. I knew that, narcissists are narcissists. I mean, if someone have the characteristics of a narcissist, it doesn't matter if they're spiritual, if they're a teacher, if they're a doctor, if they're a lawyer, if they're a member of a church. It just doesn't matter. They still have these same characteristics. And that brings me to number 2, which is they have a spiritual superiority complex. They're not about having a deep and profound connection with a higher power or the universe, but instead they're ego-driven, where they perceive themselves as more enlightened and awakened and simply better than others on a spiritual level. I don't know how many of you have come across anyone like that, but I certainly have. And one of the experiences I had was with an acquaintance that I had, and we became friends, and we would go and have tea. And he was a spiritual narcissist, I have determined, because the stories that he was telling me about his awakening were absolutely, I had a hard time believing him, and I'm a very, very, very open-minded person. And what he was telling me is that he was in a spa one day, and he felt Shiva, the god Shiva, separate his spine and his ribs and crawl inside of him. And so he said after that, he was able to go in this dimensional world, I'm assuming, and he said he was cutting the heads off of the cabal with a sword. And what do you say to something like that? I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. And then he also went on to say that he had earned his wings. And so, and he was exclaiming that and about how powerful he was in this other dimension. And he said he meditated, he could meditate for hours and hours and days and maybe even weeks if he possibly could. And I really had a hard time with that. Like I said, I'm very open-minded to a lot of things, but and then I started looking into Shiva. And Shiva doesn't sound like to me like it's the best thing. He's the creator and the destroyer of everything. So it seemed kind of strange to me that this powerful entity of Shiva had entered into this guy that I knew and was allowing him to go into different dimensions with swords to whack the heads off of the cabal. And I don't know if anybody else have any stories like that, or maybe you've had an experience like that. If you've had an experience like that, I would be ecstatic if you would share that with me, because I haven't heard anything like the story that he told me. And so that brings me to the third one of the misuse of spiritual teachings for personal validation. And spiritual narcissists will use their accessibility to spiritual modalities to justify their actions, no matter if it contradicts the truest essence of the spiritual teachings or not. And they'll also manipulate the teachings to validate their personal beliefs or actions or behaviors. And I do have some sympathy for that, as well as all people with narcissistic characteristics, because I understand that deep down they're suffering with the pain and the guilt and the underlying security that they have, that they use to present the ego in the way that they do. But that is not something that I want to be around. And I wanted to make this video because I think that spiritual narcissists can kind of sneak up on you. And people who are in a vulnerable position, who want to raise their consciousness and go through this process of ascension, and they're being bombarded by spiritual narcissists who don't have the best interests in mind. And remember that people who are narcissistic all have the same pattern. I don't know why, but they have the same pattern of love bombing and gaslighting, and then a discard, and then a hoovering. And so if you have had any experience or research with a narcissist, those can be applied to a spiritual narcissist also, except it's hidden. It's hidden under this guise of spirituality, because like with myself, I expect other people to be like I am, where that's what my intention is, and I want to focus on my purpose and serving others, but also letting go of what doesn't serve me. Which means if you're in situations where you're in a yoga class, or you're meditating, or you're getting a massage, or you're at a retreat, that it's really important to pay attention to make sure that there's not this spiritual narcissist, because especially if you're an empath, because they will sneak right in there and you won't even know what happened. So I just wanted to caution everybody and give everybody a heads up, even though we're all on the same planet, trying to do the same things in different ways. The key to genuine spirituality encourages introspection and growth and humility, not a self-righteous or egotistical validation. So if you have any comments for me, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.